We're back. Mitt Romney, as we all know by now, those of us following this, is one of the most disciplined candidates on the stump. Romney stays pretty much on message, if you will, at his events. Did you have to wonder whether or not it's just his personality or it's something being scripted for him? Is it his campaign staffers who are really being the talking? Is he got a Cyrano de Bergerac somewhere behind him writing this stuff for him? Just take a look at this dig he had at Newt Gingrich today.
There's no question that politics ain't beanbags. And we have made sure that our message is out loud and clear. The speaker has been attacking me all over the state in ways that are really extraordinary, and in some respects painful to watch because it's so revealing of him. And the fact is that he worked with hundreds of people in Washington, and only a handful of those people are willing to support him.
Well, join me right now with the Real Politics political reporter Aaron McPike and the Washington Post opinion writer Dana Milbank. Dana, your sense of this guy, do you get the feeling that he's basically sort of the Christian character in Cyrano de Bergerac? He's got people writing his stuff for him, his love letters to the American people. He couldn't think of these words himself.
Well, first of all, Chris, he got the line wrong. He should have said politics ain't beanbag. Then he should have said let's play hardball. But be that as it may, there's a pretty easy rule of thumb with Mitt Romney, and that is if it looks like it's fifth grade level humor or below, he's written it. If it's at a higher level than that, somebody else has done it. If it's a pop culture reference referring to the last decade, he had nothing to do with it. If it's Leave It to Beaver references from some time ago, very likely that Mitt Romney did that himself. So he is programmed to an extent. I think it may be when he's not programmed enough that he might make some of these more embarrassing gaffes.
So the embarrassing time when he pretended that somebody had grabbed him from behind, one of those women standing by alongside him, that was a pure Mitt. When it was the Kardashians or a reference to Bigfoot or to Lucille Ball, that was the staff taking up that stuff. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I was standing next to him when he did that thing with the waitress up there in New Hampshire, and that was very genuine and sort of painfully awkward, so you could see that. But certainly, Kim Kardashian is not something that is part of the Mitt Romney lexicon. We can assume that Stuart Stevens or somebody whispered that line to him, and he delivered it reasonably well, even if it was predictable.
Let me go to Aaron. You covered this guy. You were embedded with him for, I guess, the last campaign. How does it get to, most candidates have script writers. He's got a really good one. Stu Stevens wrote Malaria Dreams. My wife loved that movie, that book about Africa. He's a real wit. I don't think of Romney as a real wit, is he?
No, he's not a real wit, but he's really goofy. And one of the moments that he had that was so funny in 2007, actually, when he was canvassing through New Hampshire, knocking on doors, there's fall foliage is a big thing in New Hampshire, and he picked up a big maple leaf and he twirled it right around in front of me, in front of my camera, and he said, if Adam and Eve had leaves this big, they probably wouldn't have been as promiscuous. And it was just such a funny, strange, unscripted moment.
I'm embarrassed for him.
Moments like that are funnier and more authentically Mitt. But you're right that Stuart Stevens does write a lot of his jokes, but a lot of his staffers have spent a lot of time with him over the last couple of years between the last campaign, traveling the country with him when he was campaigning for McCain and then again in the midterms, and we're teaching him about pop culture and what it was like to be the youth of America, and he got a lot of more of this pop culture and the jokes and that kind of thing.
But did he ever say, did you see that movie, Aaron? Did he ever say, did you catch The Good Wife last Sunday night or anything like that? Does he ever talk about pop culture when he's walking around? Does he ever show any? Let me go back to, you were in it, first you. Does he ever show any knowledge that he's part of the American culture? He doesn't live off in some little weird niche? It is a big question for the American vote. They'd like to know that their president shares their culture.
I don't think that he knows as much about pop culture, let's say, as Barack Obama does, who it's easy for him to talk about it and have it roll off the tongue. Yeah. He's got kids that are paying attention to pop culture, and I think Barack Obama feels that more closely.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Let's take a look here. Dana. Take a look at this moment back in December when Romney compared the Gingrich campaign to an iconic scene from I Love Lucy. Now, this isn't a recent cultural reference, by the way.
I think you compare that to, was it to Pearl Harbor? I think it's more like Lucille Ball at the chocolate factory. So, you got to get it organized.
I get the feeling, Dana, that that's a real negative shot because there's a guy who's very much organized, and his biggest personal knock at Newt is he hasn't got his act together. He is Lucille Ball with Ethel Mertz there working the cupcake assembly line.
Well, he delivered that in such a flat way that it suggested, in fact, it was perhaps Mitt Romney's line. That's what I was saying. I think there is humor to the man. It's just sort of corny humor, and that's not necessarily bad, particularly in the state we're in right now in Florida. And I think, look, the Jon Stewart vote is not going to Mitt Romney anyway. That's pretty well locked up on the other side. So there is something endearing about this man's corny sense of humor. The Maple Leafs was mentioned. My favorite is when he was out in Iowa and was looking at this farmer's horses and he said, "Is that a gelding? I haven't checked." It's just such an odd thing to say, and it's funny in its own sort of corny way.
I like your reference to Florida. If you look, by the way, at the birthdays they have on the pop culture pages here in the paper, they begin with the oldest people, whereas most of those pop pages whose birthday is today, they start with the younger people. Down here, as you might have noticed, they start with the older people. Anyway, thank you very much. Erin McPike, thanks for joining us. Dana Milbank, as always. When we return, let me finish with how the nasty fight in Florida could affect this November. These things are not going to be forgotten so quickly down here. You're watching Hardball's coverage of the Republican Florida primary live from Miami.